There is a powerful altered state that is widely studied by psychologists, occupational therapists, efficiency experts, neurobiologists, and even the military. It is so powerful that people's performance jumps ahead leaps and bounds when they are in this state. It is called flow. Now, you might be thinking, flow, that sounds so hippy-dippy, that sounds so woo-woo. And I feel you. I am extremely cool with hippy-dippy and woo-woo. But I also like the scientific method, and flow is something that can be empirically measured by science. The first person to start to look deeply at flow was a psychologist in the 80s who wrote a book on the subject and studied it quite a bit. His name is Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And if you think that's a mouthful, you should look at how it's spelled. Anyway, good old Mihaly wrote a whole book on the science of flow. He interviewed many people, and he dug into it really deep, and his works are seminal on the subject. One thing that they're discovering with flow is that when someone is in flow, there are actual changes that take place in the brain. I am going to try my hand at explaining some sort of medical sciencey terms, and I hope I don't butcher it for any of you actual neurologists out there. But from what I understand, we have a prefrontal cortex. It's the part of our brain that's up front. Very, very important to humans. We need it. It's essential. It's in charge of high-level planning, judgments, reasoning, self-consciousness, self-awareness. If you damage your prefrontal cortex, like you get hit on the head, what can happen is people lose track of who they are in a social setting. So they say inappropriate things, or they take off their clothes in public. That part of our brain is, we like it, we want it, we want to keep it around. However, that part of our brain is also extremely conservative. It has a direct nerve link to our amygdala, which is actually in the back of our head, and our amygdala is in charge of fight or flight. So there's this nerve cord that goes from prefrontal cortex right down to our amygdala, which means if the prefrontal cortex ever sees a threat, it's like, fire amygdala. No, back away, don't do it. Remove yourself from the situation. And something else that I think is super interesting about this is that as far as the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala goes, there is really no difference between an audience of people that is ready to hear what you have to say and a tiger that is ready to eat you alive. Either way, your brain is like, get us out of here, because it all feels like death to the amygdala. So what I'm trying to say is that our prefrontal cortex, that is in charge of most of our lives, is not really interested in taking risks. But in order to grow in any field, we need to be able and willing to take risks. And what is super interesting and fascinating is that when somebody is in flow, scientists say they reach a state that is called transient hypofrontality. Let me just confirm that that's right. Yes. Transient hypofrontality. What that is the prefrontal cortex goes dark. So all that stuff, the judgment, self-awareness, everything that's like constantly going on, your grocery list, your laundry list, your to-do list, your worry list, the ticker tape of daily life winks out during flow. And other areas of the brain light up. Now, it's called transient because it's just for a while. You don't want it to wink out all the time because we need it. We do need it. We like it. We want it. But for creative purposes, we need it to go away. So what ends up happening when we're in the state of transient hypofrontality is our self-awareness is altered. Pretty much it's an out of self experience. You are no longer thinking about your physical body or your problems, really just the task at hand. Another thing that happens is time starts to take on weird dimensions. For example, for a downhill skier executing a complicated move that maybe takes a few seconds, what ends up happening is it feels like minutes, because the skier in flow is able to make tiny decisions, and it feels like the whole thing takes a long time, even though it doesn't. What happens more frequently for me is that time ceases to exist. So I can be sitting, making something, working on a painting, and 4 hours can go by. And when I come out of it, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm hungry and I have to pee and my back hurts because I've been crouched over. But it's like all those things go away when you're in the state of flow. Another thing that's super important for flow is our brains in flow become more flexible and loose. A lot of the people who study creativity and innovation will say that what you want when you are attempting to be creative is a loose brain rather than a tight brain. A tight brain is sometimes considered to be an intelligent brain, which we also want. But a loose brain is one that's able to accept and generate new ideas. It's like when you're in the bath thinking about nothing and you all of a sudden have a great idea. It's like your brain isn't really like pounding away at the problem. Your prefrontal cortex is either involved in another task or just kind of relaxed out. And these ideas will come swimming on in, which we in fact want. Now, there's a few ways to get into flow. One is to follow your pleasure. It's very difficult to find flow if you don't like what you're doing. So, as I've been talking too, I think it's possible that you have thought of at least 16 times you have been in flow in various activities. These are called flow triggers, and they are as varied as people are varied. A lot of people say that various kinds of physical pursuits they can get into flow. A lot of people say that things like cross-country skiing or jogging can get them into flow. People say, of course, all sorts of creative pursuits like knitting or woodworking. Some people say writing. Some people, like me, I'm an unusual one, but I actually get into flow when I'm public speaking. I know, it's weird. When we can get into flow, the thing that is so remarkable and worth spending some time on is that not only is it pleasurable, not only do we push our ideas forward and we get much better at whatever it is we're trying to do, but it also rewires our brain in a really important and positive way. So they've done studies on meditators who have done, habitual meditation for years and years and years, and are very good at getting into a flow state that's aided by meditation. And they found that the connection between their prefrontal cortex and their amygdala, that nerve connection, is much thinner than the average extremely stressed out individual. And we don't necessarily want to have that connection be so strong, since we are not getting chased by tigers. Yes, that driver did flip you off. Your life is not in danger, however. You're gonna be fine. The amygdala does not know that. The amygdala thinks it's, time to protect the clan. But you're gonna be fine. Go home, paint some watercolors, you'll rewire those systems. Everything is gonna be all right. Thanks for watching my video about flow. I hope you learned something. Please tell me your flow triggers. I love hearing flow triggers. Put them below. Also, please check out the links that I added. There's a link to some of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's work. Also to Stephen Kotler, who's an amazing resource. He's written a couple books. He has some excellent talks on YouTube as well, and I'll link those below. Stay tuned for my second video on flow, because I want to talk about how to get into flow, how to stay in flow, and how to make flow work for you. If you like this video, I post at least once a week with all sorts of topics around art, creativity, tutorials, life, etc. So please subscribe. See you in the next video. The first person to Dakota, stop it.
Thank you. I wonder if that...
There is really no difference between...
I was gonna let you keep going because it was like you're on a roll.
Oh, but a loose brain is one that is able to... But a loose brain is one that's able to... But a loose brain is one that's able to accept and generate new ideas.